Did you see Missouri U.S. Senator Josh Hawley just roasting airline executives yesterday? Oh, my goodness. How horrible is the airline experience these days? As somebody who flies quite a bit and now does it with young children, it is a horrific experience. And it's only getting worse, right? Nothing about it is enjoyable. The seats get smaller. The service gets worse. The delays continue. If you have to get a layover, you have a choice between a 30-minute layover, which you know you're not going to make the next plane for, or a 3-hour layover. The options are horrific. Everything is stacked against the consumer when it comes to the airline industry. And yesterday, there was a Senate Permanent Subcommittee on Investigations where there were senior executives from American Airlines, United Airlines, Delta, Spirit, Frontier, and they were questioned about their companies increasing fees on customers. And Josh Hawley went scorched earth on these executives. And he spoke passionately. He spoke as a father of young kids. We each have 3 little kids. And he said to these airline executives, what if I had a minute with them in the room, I would love to say to these guys as well.
But you guys do appreciate that flying on your airlines is a disaster, don't you? I'm slightly amazed by the general attitude of all of you here. Flying on your airlines is horrible. It's a terrible experience. I mean, I say this as a father of 3 young children, but I can't tell you, nobody enjoys flying on your airlines. It's a disaster. You charge people fees that they know nothing about. You harass them to death. I'll never forget, Mr. Johnson, during COVID when an attendant on your airline threatened my wife because our then 5-year-old son, his mask had slipped. This is back when we all had to wear those ridiculous masks. His mask had slipped below his nose. This flight attendant came up to my wife and said if she didn't keep that mask over his nose at all points on this 4-hour flight, she would personally see that my wife was banned from flying. This has happened over and over to families. It's terrible. It's absolutely terrible.
That was Josh Hawley yesterday on Capitol Hill, ripping airline executives to their faces. And gosh, I don't get a lot of secondhand jealousy, but man, was I jealous. I was like, yeah, you go, Josh. That's beautiful, my man. Keep it rolling. Well, to add to that, I was there during COVID with a then 2-year-old. And we would have flight attendants, oh, your 2-year-old's not wearing her mask properly. But even worse than that is when we show up to an airport and Kate's got her bag and they throw it on the scale and it's like, oh, I'm sorry, this is 52 pounds. You have to get it below 50. All right, 3 little kids. Let's just start unpacking luggage and packing to the other luggage and moving things from this bag to that bag and that bag to this bag and around we go. All to meet some made-up guideline of getting under 50 pounds for the bag. That's just one example. The layover process is horrific. The delays are getting worse. And these airline executives, well, they appear to be unwilling or incapable of doing anything about it. Now, what's interesting to me is that you do have a situation where Republicans and Democrats are going after the companies, but part of the problem is the government. Part of the problem is this industry is not built for more competitiveness. If you could get a more competitive landscape and you could have easier barriers to entry, and I know it's a difficult industry to create more competitiveness in. Like, I can't just say to John, hey, you want to start an airline? And start an airline. I don't know if Mark's interested, but the 3 of us could not just start an airline tomorrow. There's a lot
to break it 20.
Yeah. That's not going to work. So I get it. The last airline that I can think of that came to be was probably JetBlue. Maybe that was 25 years ago, 30 years ago, give or take. And now they've become a total garbage company, too. They were hot stuff when they first came on the scene, and they're now total trash. I was screwed by JetBlue on multiple occasions last year at this time during Thanksgiving travel. But on top of that, the government, denied Spirit and JetBlue from merging. The Biden administration prevented them from merging. What's now happened? Spirit's filed for bankruptcy. And they say they don't want merges because they say it will stifle competition. Well, you've got one less company anyway. If Spirit goes under, so what's the big deal? Let them become one company, and maybe they can better compete with American, with United, with Delta, with Southwest. That's how they should have handled it. That's why they should have allowed that merger to go through instead of denying it. So when you hear Josh Hawley there, how fired up as a traveler does that make you? Now, I hope that they can shake these guys and gals up a little bit and get them to provide a better service, but it's going to take more than a browbeating on Capitol Hill. I just hope it's a step in the right direction. 913-4087-957. Travis in Overland Park. What's happening, Travis?
Hey, Pete. How you doing?
I'm doing well, man. What's going on?
Oh, not much. Yeah, I had last year I was coming back from Cancun, and basically we had to fly from Cancun, I think, to DFW, and then DFW back to Kansas City. Well, I'm pretty sure it was American Airlines or something like that, but we got to the airport there in Cancun, and it was a 3-hour delay because I guess they had some like weather conditions or whatnot. But we ended up, long story short, we ended up getting on the plane. We got to DFW, I think at like 9 o'clock at night, and our flight to get from DFW to Kansas City was like 45 minutes from our landing time. The flight attendants on this flight knew that there were a bunch of people that needed a connecting flight to get back home to Kansas City. Well, they kept us on the flight, like planes docked and everything. They had us on the plane for like an extra 20 minutes after everything had already been connected, set up, and ready to go. It was just ridiculous. And I'm sitting there, I was like, what in the world? And plus we had to go through customs, we had to go through security, and it's just like, okay, I get, you guys got procedures and everything, but when I have to do a dead sprint through customs and security and then change a terminal, it's just ridiculous.
Did you make it?
I made it.
Yeah.
The 3 women I was traveling with almost didn't make it, but they ended up making it.
Yep. No, hey, man, that is, gosh, thank you, Travis. I had a very similar experience last Thanksgiving. We had a direct flight to see family in New York to LaGuardia. American switched it to a connecting flight through Washington, D.C. Well, if you're booking flights for Thanksgiving and a month before the flight, they switch it to a connecting flight, what are you going to do? All the flights are booked up. So we had to stick with a connecting flight through Washington, D.C., and it was like a 45-minute layover, which is very tight. So we've got to now circle, I think it wasn't Dulles. I think it was Dulles. It wasn't Reagan. So we're getting towards the airport in D.C. from Kansas City, and they're like, yeah, it's kind of crowded down there, a day or two before Thanksgiving. So we're going to have to do some circles up here in the air, and hopefully we'll be on the ground soon because there wasn't a gate for us. So that we just started doing circles in the air. We land, same thing. Most people on that flight are connecting. We have got a sprint. Now, at this time, a year ago, Kate's 6 months pregnant, 5 months pregnant. We've only got the 2 kids at the time. So I remember sprinting with Chloe, our middle one, and she was loving every second of it as I'm holding her running through the airport. Kate's with Claire because she's pregnant and Claire's the older one, so Claire's able to kind of move on her own at that point at 4 years old. And we are bolting. I mean, sprinting. Now, we made it by about a minute or two before they closed the gate to the next flight. But it was so close, and there were many families that did not make it. In fact, one lady got on with one of her kids. Her husband was behind with the other one, and only half the family made it. Now, listen, I'm sorry. You can't get on the plane without the other part of your family. You got to wait at the gate. You can't run on the plane and assume they're going to wait it and hold it for your husband. That's not how these things work. But they also should have let those people get on the plane. They wouldn't have been late, if at all. That is the thing that's got to improve.